I didn't lose my husband to another woman. I lost him the moment his eyes stopped choosing me. I noticed it before I was ready to admit it. It wasn't dramatic. There was no argument, no raised voice, no obvious betrayal. Just a moment, quiet, small, and sharp enough to leave a cut I couldn't ignore. We were walking through a narrow street, old buildings on both sides, the kind of place where sounds echo and footsteps feel closer than they are. The afternoon light was soft, falling unevenly between the buildings. I was talking about something unimportant, dinner plans, I think, when his grip on my hand loosened. At first, I thought nothing of it. Then he slowed down. She walked a few steps ahead of us. Casual, confident, unaware, or pretending to be. Her hair moved with her stride, catching the light. Nothing about her screamed extraordinary, yet something in my husband shifted so subtly that I felt it before I saw it. His eyes followed her, not just a glance, not the accidental look everyone gives without meaning to. It was focused, intentional, the kind of look that lingers just a second too long. I felt invisible. I squeezed his hand gently, a silent reminder that I was there. He startled slightly, as if waking from a thought he didn't want discovered, and looked at me with a quick smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, even though something inside me had already started to sink. We kept walking, but the space between us felt different. He was beside me, yet his attention was somewhere else. Every few steps, his gaze drifted forward again. I watched him from the corner of my eye, my chest tightening with each stolen glance. I told myself I was imagining it. That I was tired. That marriage changes people, and not every look means something. But my heart didn't believe the excuses. I remembered the early days. How he used to look at me like I was the only thing worth seeing. How his eyes softened when I entered a room. How even in a crowd, he somehow found me first. That look was gone, and the realization hurt more than I expected. At home, nothing was said. He moved around the apartment like usual, setting his keys down, checking his phone, answering messages with half smiles I didn't recognize. I watched him quietly, noticing details I had ignored before, how often he was distracted, how easily his attention slipped away from me. That night, lying beside him, I stared at the ceiling while he slept peacefully. His breathing was steady, untroubled. I wondered how someone could sleep so well while the person next to them was unraveling. I replayed the moment again and again. The way his body leaned slightly forward. The way his eyes followed her as if pulled by instinct. Was it just attraction, or was it something worse, something that had been building quietly while I trusted him completely? The next few days answered that question for me. It happened again. Different street. Different girl. Same look. This time, I didn't look away. I watched him openly, watched the way his expression changed, watched how his posture shifted, how he seemed more awake, more present, for someone who wasn't me. My throat tightened. When I finally spoke, my voice came out softer than I intended. "You were looking at her." He paused. Just for a moment. Then he laughed. "You're overthinking," he said. It doesn't mean anything, but it meant everything. Because he didn't deny it. And in that laugh, dismissive and careless, I felt something break. Not loudly. Not all at once. Just a quiet fracture spreading through years of love and trust. That night, I stood in front of the mirror and studied my reflection like a stranger. I searched for what I had lost. Youth. Beauty. Excitement. Or had I simply become familiar, too familiar to hold his attention? I realized then that the pain wasn't jealousy. It was displacement. I was no longer the first place his eyes rested. And once that changes, love doesn't disappear immediately. It fades slowly, painfully, while one person notices and the other pretends nothing is wrong. I lay in bed beside him again, this time fully awake, fully aware. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The distance between us didn't arrive suddenly. It stretched itself slowly into our daily life, settling into small moments I couldn't ignore anymore. Mornings became quieter. Conversations shorter. Where we once talked about everything, from dreams to the smallest annoyances, now there were pauses, empty spaces filled with nothing but the sound of phones and passing time. I started noticing how often he checked his surroundings when we were out. Not in a suspicious way, but in a searching way. As if something better might appear if he kept looking. I hated myself for noticing, yet I couldn't stop. Once you sense a crack, you start tracing it everywhere. I tried to fix things the way wives are taught to fix things. I cooked his favorite meals again, the ones he used to praise. I dressed with more care, paid attention to details I had stopped thinking about years ago. I laughed louder at his jokes, touched his arm when he spoke, reminded him, without words, that I was still here. He noticed, but not the way I hoped. "Why are you trying so hard lately?" he asked one evening, half smiling. The question stung. Trying shouldn't be visible in love. It should be natural. Effort noticed is effort unreturned. "I just want us to be close again," I said. He shrugged. "We are close. But closeness isn't measured by shared space. It's measured by shared attention." One afternoon, I saw her again. Or someone like her. It hardly mattered anymore. A young woman stood near a cafe as we passed. He didn't stop walking this time, but his eyes betrayed him. They followed her reflection in the glass window beside us. That was when something inside me hardened. I stopped him mid-step. "Do you even realize you're doing it?" He frowned. "Doing what?" "Looking at other women like I don't exist." Silence fell between us, heavy and uncomfortable. People passed by, unaware that my marriage was quietly unraveling on the sidewalk. "You're exaggerating," he said finally. "You're insecure lately." Insecure. The word wrapped itself around my heart like a verdict. As if this was my flaw, my weakness, my failure to be enough. That night, we argued for the first time in months. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with tired voices and wounded pride. "I'm not cheating," he said. "You're acting like I am." "I never said you were," I replied. "But your eyes go places your heart shouldn't." He scoffed. "So I'm not even allowed to look now." "Look," I said, struggling to stay calm, "or search." He didn't answer. And that silence was louder than any confession. Days turned into weeks. I stopped trying as hard, not because I didn't care, but because I was exhausted. Love shouldn't feel like a competition you're constantly losing. I began to notice something else too, my own reflection changing. I wasn't just hurt, I was shrinking. I measured my worth by where his eyes landed. I questioned myself constantly. And that scared me more than his wandering gaze. One evening, while folding laundry, I found an old photo of us tucked between towels. We were younger, happier. His arm around me, his eyes locked on mine like the world didn't exist beyond that frame. I sat on the bed and cried quietly, pressing the photo to my chest. Not because I missed who he was, but because I missed who I was with him. That night, I made a decision, not about leaving, not yet, but about seeing the truth clearly. I stopped pretending things were fine. I started watching not with fear, but with clarity. And clarity changes everything. I realized he wasn't looking because those women were better. He was looking because he was restless. Because familiarity bored him. Because comfort no longer excited him. Because love without effort had become invisible to him. And that realization hurt in a different way, less sharp, more heavy. One morning, as we sat across from each other at breakfast, I said calmly, "I need to know something." He looked up. "What? Are you still choosing me?" The question caught him off guard. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes searched mine, then drifted away, just for a second. That second told me everything. "I don't know," he said quietly. And in that moment, I understood that sometimes betrayal doesn't come with secrets or lies. Sometimes it comes with hesitation. I nodded slowly, feeling strangely calm. The pain was still there, but it was cleaner now, no confusion, no denial. "I deserve to be chosen without doubt," I said. He didn't argue. And for the first time since this began, I wasn't afraid of what would come next. Because love that makes you feel unseen is not love you should beg for. And somewhere deep inside me, strength was waking up. The days after that conversation felt unreal, like I was living inside a pause. Nothing dramatic happened. No bags packed. No doors slammed. We continued sharing the same space, but it no longer felt like a home. It felt like a waiting room where neither of us knew what we were waiting for. I stopped asking questions, not because I didn't want answers, but because I already had them. When someone hesitates to choose you, they've already made a choice. They just haven't found the courage to say it out loud. I started reclaiming pieces of myself quietly. I woke up earlier, not to make him breakfast, but to sit alone with my thoughts. I took longer walks, alone. I let silence exist without trying to fill it. And in that silence, I began hearing my own voice again, the one I had drowned out trying to keep us together. He noticed the change. "You're distant," he said one evening. I smiled softly. "I've always been here. You just weren't looking anymore." For the first time, he didn't deflect. He looked tired, confused, maybe even afraid. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "I know," I replied. "That's what hurts the most. Because intention doesn't erase impact. And love doesn't survive on good intentions alone." A few days later, it happened again, the moment that once shattered me, now seen through different eyes. We were out, walking side by side. Another woman passed us. Younger, confident, glowing in her own way. His head turned. Just slightly. But this time, I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. I stopped walking. He took a few steps forward before realizing I wasn't beside him anymore. He turned back, surprised. "Aren't you coming?" he asked. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I had loved. The man who once chose me without hesitation. The man who now stood divided between comfort and curiosity. "No," I said calmly. "I think this is where I stop." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean I won't walk beside someone who keeps looking for someone else." The street felt quieter suddenly, like the world was giving us space. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. "I didn't cheat," he said, almost pleading. "I know," I answered. "But you left long before you touched anyone." That was the truth he couldn't escape. That night, we finally talked honestly, not defensively, not angrily, just honestly. He admitted he felt restless, unfulfilled, afraid of routine. He said he loved me, but his words lacked weight, like they'd been said too late. "I don't want to lose you," he said. I believed him, but I also believed myself. "I already lost myself trying not to lose you," I replied. We slept in separate rooms that night. And for the first time in a long time, I slept deeply. In the weeks that followed, I made my decision slowly, carefully, without drama. I didn't leave because I hated him. I left because I respected myself. Because love should feel safe, not uncertain. Because I deserved a partner whose eyes didn't wander when life became familiar. On the day I packed my things, he stood by the door, silent. "You're really going," he said. "Yes. Is there anything I can say?" I thought for a moment. Then I shook my head. "You already said it, every time you looked away." I walked out with steady steps, even though my heart trembled. Strength isn't the absence of pain. It's choosing yourself despite it. Months passed. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. Some days were heavy, some nights lonely. But slowly, I began to recognize myself again. The woman who laughed easily, who didn't question her worth, who didn't compete for attention. One afternoon, I caught my reflection in a shop window. I was walking alone, confident, present. And I smiled. Not because everything was perfect. But because I was finally looking at someone who chose herself. And that, I learned, is where real love begins.